What are the lessons from scaling and selling a company and the key challenges, step-by-step success during your journey?
So we scaled it to over $70 million of revenue per year. That was the accomplishment. The business started, I think sometimes we're too attached with our strategy and we miss the little subtle signals of transformation. I call this
How founders can master decision-making in high-stakes situations.
What I discover is most of my failures, they stem from what I now call and this is a huge problem for founders and leaders, because when you're in fear mode, then
And what are the biggest mistakes founders make when selling their company?
it's often the case that people will reach out to you through private equity firms, or it might be
You have a big TED Talk coming up.
yeah.
How excited are you about that?
I'm very excited. When I started as an entrepreneur, I gave myself 3 material goals, if you will, and I wanted to be my darkest point. So just to give you a brief idea of the failures I've gone through, so I talked to you about the $5.4 million scam. It's as if a calling where I wanted to drop everything and just be a father, not the father of the year, not the perfect father, not anything like that, just be a father in the present moment with my kids. And I took my 3 kids to where I realized that having this strong sense of self outside my business and outside my entrepreneurial goals even, and myself, was a...
Welcome to another episode of Boardsi Leadership Talks. I'm your host, Martin Rowinski, CEO of Boardsi, and today we're diving deep into entrepreneurship, high-stakes decision-making, and business growth with an incredible guest, Phil Neal. Phil is a serial entrepreneur, deep tech investor, and M&A advisor who has built and exited an $80 million plus company and now leads WRC Defense Fund, investing in high-growth defense and strategic industries. He has spent his career mastering the entrepreneurial journey and now shares his expertise on scaling businesses, navigating uncertainty, and redefining success beyond the exit. From leading VC-backed ventures to advising founders on M&A and growth strategies, Phil brings a battle-tested playbook for bold entrepreneurship, fearless decision-making, and scaling companies with impact. Today, we'll uncover the mindset, strategies, and insights that separate thriving entrepreneurs from those who get stuck in the struggle. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martin. That's a great intro.
All correct, right? I didn't make any mistakes there.
Nope, it's all good. Thank you.
Good. Awesome. So you grew a company from basically $300, call it $500, to an $80 million exit. What are the lessons from scaling and selling a company and the key challenges? I'm sure it wasn't a step-by-step success during your journey.
Yes. So we scaled it to over $70 million of revenue per year. That was the accomplishment, and we did it in a very unusual way. So the business started, we were 4 friends. We decided to partner and create this venture on the side where we were buying and reselling medical supply to a local health center, giving them a discount from centralizing purchases and then making a little cut in between. That was the basic business model. So we bootstrapped it. We didn't have any money in the company. And when COVID hit, because we were dependent on our suppliers to buy and resell, it became a big problem because we were put on an allocation that was capped at the last average of the last 12 months of purchases. So all the growth we had done in the past year, we had to cancel our customers and basically be unprofitable until COVID passed, which would have brought us to bankruptcy. And so at that point, what helped us is we pivoted the business model. We saw an opportunity in medical nitrile gloves, and we just focused on that. We're able to learn on the spot how to source directly from China, and then grew it to 70 million in about 8 months. And so that was the beginning of our expansion.
So the key there was pivoting, finding a way to pivot and keep going.
Yes, I think sometimes we're too attached with our strategy and we miss the little subtle signals of transformation. I call this the whispers of transformation because it really is a whisper. It is your intuition telling you that you should look in a direction without you seeing where you have to go. And if the noise of growth is too loud, if you're too attached to your identity as an owner of this business, as the inventor of that business model or whatever, then you miss these signals and ultimately you miss your chance at success.
Absolutely. And you also talk about the entrepreneurial shadow, turning uncertainty and pressure into power. How founders can master decision making in high stakes situations, why resilience and reinvention are non negotiable for success. Can you dive in a little bit more on that?
Yes. So my story, you mentioned quite a bit of success there, but it's mostly been in the shadows. I've mostly failed. And this is where I got my golden nuggets of wisdom that is helping me be successful again, right? And when I reflect on my journey in the last 5, 6 years, what I discover is most of my failures, they stem from what I now call the shadow of entrepreneurship. And the reason why I was able to transform is because I was able to properly navigate by trial and error this shadow. And now I've taken the time to step back and put it into a framework. And so what it is the shadow. You can break it down into three phases, more or less, four elements. So you have uncertainty. So when we start a business, we're full of hope. We know where we're going. We have our plan. We go to market. We try to make it work, but then it never goes as we think because by definition, I think entrepreneurs they live on the lining of a coin, in between two realities, trying to bridge the gap, never knowing when the universe is going to flip it on us and flip away our dreams, is what I would say. So uncertainty is inevitable, and when that happens, you can stay in control, or you can fall down into fear, which is the second level of the shadow. And this is a huge problem for founders and leaders because when you're in fear mode, uh, then you're thinking short term, you're not at your best, your founder conflicts arrive. And when you think about all the reason why a startup fail, lack of funding, founder conflict, product market misalignment, to me, it stems from losing the clarity of not making fear-based decision and staying on top of your mental game. And when I look at my story, it certainly is the case that with Neobex, when we lost certainty, and we can dive deeper into that, it led to a $5 million fraud. And when I started to have fear-based decision, well, it ultimately led to many other mistakes, and I couldn't get back in the game and really have a long-term vision that was what is feeding us as entrepreneur. And so learning how to master that is very important. And then if we fail, which is probably the case because only 2% of founders succeed on their first try, well, then we need to learn how to make the most out of that. And the way to do that is to fail by following our intuition and not listening to everybody all the time, reconnect with who we are, how we think, and really make our own mistakes. You can avoid mistakes with your governing board giving you good advices, but you should not avoid failure through advices. You should fail because you followed your instinct, then you really learned from it. There's a difference between destructive failure and a mistake. And that would lead us to the last level of the shadow, which is what happens when you fail. Well, there's the element of unworthiness that comes with that. And then you have to make a decision at the crossroad of either falling and keep sinking into this and become what I call the fallen hero, which are the spiteful people, resentful, people that feel like reality and life was against them. Uh, or you transform and you take your broken icons, these ideals that you held dear to your heart and that carried you through your journey, but that ultimately might have been false. You take these broken icons and you integrate them, you share them, you make them your strength for your next journey, either as an entrepreneur or outside of entrepreneurship. So in a nutshell, that's my concept of the shadow.
That's awesome. And obviously, entrepreneurship is pretty deep within you. Did you come from a family of entrepreneurs, or at what point did you decide you're going to be an entrepreneur?
So I didn't realize that there were some entrepreneurship in my family until later, because my father has an entrepreneur spirit, but it was always kind of like a survival entrepreneurship more than anything else, because he had to quit school very young. And when I was a teen, he lost his job. And so we were very poor for many years. I had to work, to help pay for the bills and stuff. And at that time, he was getting contracts, painting houses, and here and there. So that was a little bit of entrepreneurship. The courage of uncertainty, I saw it first there. I saw it with my grandfather, who had a little shop that does mold, to create mold. I know, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Not mold like something that's like
That's gonna kill you.
yeah, mold like the structure. So
Yeah.
these were the two people in my life that I were in contact, but it was never taught us entrepreneurship. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur until later in my career, where I could see a pattern of, okay, I'm super excited to get into pharmaceutical sales and I'll compete the people with the PhD in science. I'm excited to go into B2B sales and I'll compete the master's degree, and then once I'm done, I'm bored. And so the creative process of figuring it out and scaling it was what I loved. And when I hit my goal, I wanted to move to something else. So that was my little soul call to entrepreneurship, where I thought I might have something to discover and learn in that direction.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so you obviously sold a company and then you got the idea to go and help other companies. I know you're doing some advising, some board work, and obviously some M&A stuff, investing in deep tech and defense. So let's talk about what makes a company attractive for investment in strategic industries, and how does WRC Defense Fund is it shaping the future of defense innovation?
Yeah. So with WRC Defense, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find. So we're trying to have a different approach to defense, investing in defense industry. So typically, when you invest, you're very geographically restrained. So you're going to invest in the United States because there's so much compliance. It's very hard um, to really have an international footprint as a defense industry. But the way we're doing it is we're focusing on a broader scope. So NATO-friendly country, which might, have to be adapted depending on what happens with Trump and NATO. But we look at the world where there are friendly alignment, and then we look at growth stage companies that could expand in the US and have their own US based entity over here, which we facilitate through our network of advisor, a lot, any people that has connection on the procurement side and understands the legal hoops that you have to go through in order to be established here and considered for contract. And we do it in a way where we validate the demand first, and to make sure that we are good at that, we restrain the scope of sector that we are interested in to just a few sectors within the deep tech space, like anything around robotics, anything around quantum computing and AI, advanced material, and energy security is where we try to stay. But so that allows us to have a broader international perspective, target companies at the right stage for our value creation plan, and then bring them over here and I'll compete the market just by having the right alignment.
Yeah, awesome. And what are the biggest mistakes founders make when selling their company? And to offset that, how too strategically can they position a business for maximum valuation?
So one thing that I would say is you should aim for strategic buyers. It's often the case that people will reach out to you through private equity firms, or it might be someone you know. So okay, maybe in French there's a saying. I'm a French Canadian, so in French we say it's not c'est plus comment ça vaut, mais comment ça va. So it means in English, it's not how much it's worth, it's how well are you doing personally. So there's a whole context right now of generational wealth transfer. I think that one of the mistakes that founders make is they are in the shadows when they negotiate this, and so they lose track of objective value of their company. They might be intimidated by negotiation tactic that doesn't serve them, and so they get trapped into the whole ecosystem of argument that comes from the private equity side that might look at specific metrics and not the whole picture of the value that this acquisition can bring to the acquirer. So that's the big difference between private equity and strategic buyers. Is there's value outside the business that you've built. Value is in the eyes of the beholder in many ways, right? So founders should aim for that. They should also aim to be accompanied by firms like STS Capital that specialize in that and that can protect them from having a shadow-based response to exiting their company, because it's a very emotional journey. And when I made my exit, uh, it wasn't easy. Like there's a lot of negotiation. It's harsh. My former partner bought my shares originally, and so it goes into conflict very fast.
Yeah. So your journey, obviously, you keep going. You're still young, and you have a big TED talk coming up.
Yeah,
How excited are you about that?
I'm very excited. When I started as an entrepreneur, I gave myself 3 material goals, if you will. I wanted to be financially free so that my children don't grow up poor. I wanted to pay my parents' retirement. And then I wanted to have a positive impact. And originally, I studied to be an high school teacher. That's the diploma behind the globe over there. And when I decided to break off on that path, I always had the goal to go back to teaching as a end of career venture. And when I made my exit, my partial exit in 2021, uh, I decided that I wanted to get into more entrepreneur journey loop so that I could really, really master it. And so that's when I decided to be a serial entrepreneur. I became a VC, and I became a very involved VC, basically on the day-to-day with the founders, um, to eventually go back to that. And now that I have a couple years, I don't think I'm there yet. I still want to get into more journeys, but I discovered a few gems that I don't think are in the idea ecosystem of entrepreneurship that I feel like they're worth sharing. And the fact that I'm getting my TED Talk on that, to me, is a good sign that it is needed to talk about these things.
So can you give us a little preview of your TED talk? Like just break down some of the points you're gonna put together.
Yes, so it's going to be around the shadow of entrepreneurship. I'm going
I
to go
figure.
through some of my stories. My point is right now, so there's a trend of entrepreneurship. There's 430 new businesses were filed per month in the US last year, which is 50% more than 2019. And people are very optimistic. But like I said, only 2% of first-time founders build a sustainable business from the start. So failure is the norm, not the exception. And learning how to fail as an entrepreneur might be the number one skill that people need to have. And so that's kind of how I started. And then I go into the shadow, the four symptoms that I told you about, the 3 symptoms and failure that I told you about. And I finish with my lessons, which are the lessons I've learned. It's 7, so I can briefly tell you. It's the first one is about um, understanding your core motivation to make them your wings to fly above the shadow. Uh, the shadow check ritual to make sure to gauge the state that you're currently in. Um, you have letting the world burn for a while. So sometimes, when we're fear-based decision, uh, we don't take the time. We think everything's a priority, but there's a difference between a priority and just fires that you want to extinguish all the time. And as a founder, you need to let it burn a little bit until you can find your anchor, and then that's kind of a place of safety from an identity standpoint. And then you listen to the whispers of transformation, and you transform into the last stage of your journey, which is to share your wisdom and go back and be the positive force that you can be.
That's awesome. Exciting.
It's
How nervous are you?
I've never done it. I mean, I'm gonna have to practice this summer. But yeah, I think it's I'm gonna build some workshop. I'm working on a book on the same subject. I've always dreamed of writing a book, and not just as sometimes I feel like books have become a lead magnet. I tend to view it more as a legacy. So I want to be
Yeah.
mindful of putting the right time and effort. I'll be working with a university professor in Georgetown. He's going to help me really put the golden nuggets in a way that's helpful. So pretty excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds great. Let's talk real quick beyond the exit, the true meaning of success for founders and why scaling sustainably matters more than just an exit and how to balance entrepreneurial ambition with personal fulfillment.
Yes. So my darkest point, um, so just to give you a brief idea of the failures I've gone through. So I talked to you about the $5.4 million scam. Then a couple months later, we lost a $300 million contract, which almost bankrupt the company because we had paid for the first shipment with money that we had to pay for income tax at the end of the day. Stupid mistakes. Uh, Fortunately, I was able to return $1 million of glove to the manufacturer, and so we eventually were able to kind of make it work. But then when I eventually became full-time with Promethean, we pivoted again to find product market fit. And when we finally found product market fit, it had taken too much time for us to understand what TRLs were and how to launch a deep tech company because it's an advanced material field. And so I lost my two founders and they burnt out and they quit, the two inventors of the patent. So that was a big blow. It took me all summer to restructure the whole company. And as I was done with that, my warehouse burnt with 500,000 boxes of gloves. Uh, and I had left operation. I had made my partial exit, left my operation. And so that was a big hit. And I was already, tired in the shadow. And what happened is, even though I think I was pretty clear on my core motivation, I'd always given myself the identity to want to become the father of the year every year, which was very important to me. And it had helped me. But at that point, as deep in the shadow as I was, it was also a burden in some ways because it was getting all mixed up. The growth I had lost, the hope I was chasing, I couldn't see clearly at all. I was getting depressed, and something kind of clicked inside me. My intuition became loud enough to allow me to stop and watch the world burn and realize that it's not the end of the world. And then from there, I was it's as if a calling where I wanted to drop everything and just be a father, not the father of the year, not the perfect father, not anything like that. Just be a father in the present moment with my kids. And I took my three kids to a trip to Cancun. They were, I think, 7, 5, and 3 at the time. Well, I took them all by myself. My wife couldn't leave the country. There was a public worker strike. She's a social worker. Um, and that became a pivoting point for me where I realized that, having this strong sense of self outside my business and outside my entrepreneurial goals even and myself was a place of safety that could allow me to come back and really transform into the next version of myself that could launch the WRC Defense Fund, get back into advising and really find my way outside of fear-based decision. So that's the whole concept of why I think entrepreneurs needs to be mindful of self-awareness and expanding their sense of self for the journey. And also after the journey, when you have your exit, I remember feeling lost because I was 32 years old. I was a multimillionaire. All my goals were hit, but kind of got it fast. So I didn't know if I wanted to just retire and teach. Still wanted to get in the game and learn more and grow more. And all my, I couldn't really see how to structure who I was anymore. And it was hard for me. And I think that now with the clarity I have, I understand that in the shadow and in the light, you hit that same crossroad and you have to kind of decide. Maybe in the light is, do you go in the vanity route and you become this how-to guy that has the one-size-fit-all solution and whatever, ego-based, or you actually finish your journey and you help people with it.
Yeah, I don't think one size fits all works for everybody.
It doesn't work often. It's exciting, but yeah,
If it did, it'd be a lot easier and there'd be a lot more entrepreneurs.
yeah, exactly.
Well, Phil, thanks. This was an incredible conversation on entrepreneurship, obviously scaling, your point of view on M&A, navigating high stakes, leadership. Um, you talking about investing in deep tech and defense and mentoring founders, which I think is going to be a great next step for you. Excited to see your TED Talks. Um, and for our listeners, if you're looking to scale your business, navigate complex markets, or prepare for an exit, I highly recommend connecting with Phil, who you can find on LinkedIn. And you can learn more about his work at WRC Defense Fund and his latest ventures. And Phil, before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for entrepreneurs, any leaders tuning in today, something they might need to hear maybe?
Yes. So first of all, I encourage you to look at my website, philneal.com. That's where the most up-to-date things are. And I take on mentees. In fact, I have two now that I'm mentoring for this year, and I want to sustain that. So if you know someone, if you have a son that wants to get into entrepreneurship and wants to be a part of having real life experience, well, once a year, I take someone more or less. That's pretty much what I do. And the advice I would say that is something that I don't think we hear enough is listen to your instinct, your intuition. Your intuition is very important. If you think about your business as a journey, well, it's your story. So you have to really listen to yourself. You have to take the risk that you're comfortable with. You have to know that you're never going to be in full control. You'll never get perfect clarity. And we all have our basic courage, our default courage mode. We have to learn to kind of see ourselves, make decision, and decide with our instinct, is this really the quadrant I need to go? Do I need to be social now? Do I need to be creative? Do I need to be, just executing? That's what I call the courage compass. And I think if more leaders were taking the time to reconnect with their intuition in that way, the world would be better and there will be much more successes.
That's awesome. Once again, thank you, Phil, for sharing your expertise and experience, your journey with us today. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Boardsi Leadership Talks. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, subscribe, and stay connected for more insights from top leaders and innovators. Until next time, keep leading boldly and scaling fearlessly. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, my friend. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Talks. Don't forget to subscribe for more insightful conversations with industry leaders. Your support means a lot to us.